So as you think back over the last 4 years or so running Spot, what are some of the big mistakes that you made that if you could redo, you'd do differently?
The big mistakes keeps coming down to two things, which I'm sure you've experienced yourself and you've talked to other founders, and it comes probably as a recurring theme. At least when I talk to the founders, it seems like a recurring theme. One is the market makes the entrepreneurs, and founders and market makes the company, and not the other way around. And founders realize this. But ever so often you start coming up with ideas, what you think the future should be, and you try to sometimes overshoot the market or come up with more fanciful ideas as you're scaling. And the reality that keeps hitting back is just do the obvious thing that the customers are asking for that's right in front of you. Don't it's almost once you start getting distribution and scale, the ideas of what to build and what to scale are fairly in front of you because the customers are pulling you in a direction. And so there have been multiple times, including in the last couple of months I can think of, where we should be doing this because this feels like the right thing to do, or feels like where we want to take the company, but then coming down to saying, where is the market? What's the customers asking? Can we just go ahead and do that? And we realize when we do that, things. I'll give you an tangible example of that from last year. One of the biggest verticals, which ended up contributing a big chunk to our revenues, was a car wash vertical in the video intelligence space. And when we were building video intelligence, we never thought of car washes as you don't think of car washes as higher technology uses for video data and AI. And so we're like, manufacturers would use this to, improve their worker compensation, improves their productivity, XYZ industries. And we had all these fans. And some of those, customers were buying us for those as well. But car washes were just buying us a lot at the end of 2021. And we were like, yeah, this vertical is interesting, but, let's look at manufacturing and let's look at because this seemed more compelling. And that's the story we wanted to tell ourselves. And that's the story we wanted to tell the world. But then, the sales team was pulling there. And at some point we were like, okay, let's for a quarter, let's try to double down on that. And it just took off. And then we're like, okay, this is great. Like we over the last year, a lot of startups faced slowdown in growth or had to revise projections or missed numbers. We end up overshooting numbers and always hit numbers. And it thanks to car washes in part because that vertical ended up being really, really successful for us. And we realized they actually have video intelligence use cases where they look at cameras to understand, automatically create idle time reports on how much time is a car spending in the line. And they have thresholds for that based on locations. And if the car is spending more time in the line, they know that something is, because they're purely throughput based. How many cars can they get through the washing tunnel per minute? And so they are constantly looking at variances between their stores and trying to maximize the throughput. And so they never had this data. They would send people with clipboards, and and so they had these couple of different AI use cases on vacuum occupation heat maps. With heat maps, they'll understand how much vacuums are being used. And they would realize that, for certain sizes, they're overbuilding vacuums. One of our customers realized, and they realized they were going to open 10 new stores, and they said, we can open 4 less vacuums per store, which is a $50,000 saving per store that they open. And they're like, that's a CapEx save of over 10 stores, $500,000. And this they discovered in the first 30 days of using the product. So they're like, we're happy to pay you. We're happy to expand you to every store we have. We're happy to refer you to other cars. So, there are things which you don't think about and never in your whiteboarding sessions, in your intellectual discussions, sitting in Silicon Valley, things that don't seem obvious when the customers pull. So I think that continues to be a lesson, and because there's a desire to kind of paint a vision and work towards it, but there's also a reality of the end goal is still that multiple businesses and industries will use video intelligence, but the path to the customers will guide at their own pace. The second thing is about firing. You always look back and think about, everybody wants to hire better, everybody wants to hire A talent, but we all have misses. I don't think anybody can look back at the track record if they've hired long enough to say that everybody they hired have been exceptional. And so we make mistakes in hiring, and not because the other person is bad, because they're not a great fit or stage misfit or market misfit, but then being able to correct the decision fast enough, because we always tend to justify ourselves, whether it's like, just give it another quarter, or I can coach this person. That's, I think, the worst mistake is you believe you can really coach people out of
Yeah.
really negative places. So those two things I think are continuous mistakes, which I think continue to make and continue to get better at, but it's still paths to get to zero on those. Yeah,
On the market kind of pulling, the I
yeah,
think one of the interesting things that we've found at Branch is after the initial product